Advanced Training ASG Cloud Factory 8.1 Configure SSO Google Apps for CloudCockpit. Okay, in this particular training, we're going to see one of the examples how we can use the single sign-on engine in CloudCockpit. In this case, we will be covering Google Apps. So in this module, we will see three pieces: the basic and introduction, Google Apps configuration, and third, what is the CloudCockpit configuration. So the basic knowledge required for this particular configuration in CloudCockpit, it is knowing digital certificates to allow the communication between CloudCockpit infrastructure and the application that you're doing SAML, which is in this case Google Apps, but we have other good examples like Salesforce.com and Office 365, and also understand SAML concepts. So let's take a look first on the SSL diagram. So we have to understand three different pieces. The first one is the service provider. Second one is the user agent. And the third one is the identity provider. So we have 8 different steps in this particular process. Request target source, discover the LDP, also redirect the single sign-on service. So every time you click on Google Apps, for example, like Google Sheets or Google Docs, we have a redirect that happens in place. So the user agent talks to the identity provider to request a single sign-on service. We come back with the identity provider user, and of course it comes back with an XHTML form, which builds the connection back to the application we're connecting. Then we do the request assertion, the redirect to the target source, the request to the target source, and of course the application it's open. So in this case we talk about Google Apps, and on the right side we're talking about CloudCockpit. Keep in mind, this is a standard feature in CloudCockpit. No additional software is required to be installed. So now we move to the second piece. What do you need to do first in Google Apps? And what is the configuration required for that? So first of all, you have to log on to Google Apps using your administrator account. In the past, the add-ons or adding new users used to be a free feature, but now Google Apps required an annual subscription or monthly subscription per user. So if you're a customer or partner doing a proof of concept, you have to keep in mind you have to have this particular service acquired. So we go to more controls, where you can set the configuration for that matter. We open the security section, and under security we can see, for example, the basic settings, password monitoring, API, but here's the most important piece: set up single sign-on component. So getting in there, we need to set the pages from CloudCockpit that will be used for sign in and for sign out, and make sure setup with single sign-on with third-party identity provider is enabled. So first of all, check this option, and second, we need to make sure you have your URL configured. In this particular example, we are using our demo environment as a reference, so clouddemous.asg.com, and for the single sign-off is the same thing. Second point, it's the certificate. This certificate is generated by the certificate authority in the domain where CloudCockpit is installed. In the demo environment, we have a domain controller, the certificate authority installed within the same server, but in your organization, it could be different. So extract the certificate and you can import it over here. Remember, the CloudCockpit certificate is the same one that is installed in the server that Cockpit is running as is. Then we can now set up the Cloud Cockpit and do the final testing. So what do you need to do? Well, this is the main configuration file for single sign-on. Usually it is in the Cloud Cockpit web root portal custom authentication configs. It is an XML file where you have all of the rules for single sign-on, and any mistyped character can result in general failure of the single sign-on in the platform. So be careful. Therefore, if you have a test environment, please make the changes in testing there first, and then you can roll out to your production environment. Then the certificate used for single sign-on is the key for all configurations. Check carefully if all the subject configuration of the certificate is correct. And finally, after any changes in in this file, you have to restart IIS and then actually Cockpit will refresh. So use the IIS reset command for that matter. So let's take a look in the file. So this particular screenshot shows where Cloud Cockpit is installed. We went to Cloud Cockpit, Portal Custom Authentication Configs folder. This is the identity provider used for all of our single sign-on. So we will add it in Notepad. And here we will see the configuration for google.com. Here we have the URL used for that. And then the configuration settings for LDAP configurations used for the authentication. So again, it is important to mention for a multi-domain environment, some of these changes can be made in order to have all domains using SSO. So check SSL documentation in order to have more information about it. So we provide this information in the single sign-on documentation, and also our professional services team has knowledge on how to help on the setup for that. Once completed, you can see the applications published. Therefore, the SSO usually is in a web application, so we will create a web application in Cloud Cockpit. And we won't cover the guide how this group configuration is done in Active Directory, because this is similar to other configurations done to other applications like Citrix, AppMirror, RDS, and other web apps. So going to the Cloud Factory Administration Console, we will be looking into categories here. We will create a new category just for Google Apps, just to sort the applications the way we want. So we click New Category icon, and we will put the name called Google Apps. If you have more than one language, you can add more descriptions for the languages that you require. Then we'll go to Web Applications, and we will also click on New. We will add a new app application. We will add, for example, Google Apps Spreadsheets or Google Docs, and so on. So set the name for the application as well, the tooltip URL. So next page we'll see that. So the URL that it's described over here. And we need to choose the Active Directory group that will have access to the application. So what is the URL that it's used? So in this case, we're using forplayers.com.br as an example. The link will be used is this particular link for email, for calendar, for Google Drive, and just to remember, the identity ID is what you have created on the authentication config file, and the relay state is the final URL for this SSO. And this concludes this video training.